Hello, everyone. Well, today, uh, new to this visually development um, on the welcome. I just found some bugs last time. Um, um, the issue that I had was there were some bugs, obviously, code, and so today is going to be just a bug test. I mean, bug break fixes. It's not really tech. Um, I'm talking like with my microphone way to the side. I just realized that. Yeah. So the last time I was working on this, they had some issues with some bugs. For example, one of the bugs that occurs is that if I go to Q&A and I remove the questions and I leave topics and go back to Q&A, the questions are back. So that needs to be resolved. Another thing that I think we should keep is, see, when I'm scrolling, it'd be nice if this was sticky up here. So that way, regardless of how I scroll down, I can still see the steps, not have to add the questions and then have to scroll back up. So it'd be nice to have that just stick to the top of the page. So those are all things that we can fix on this stream. And also fix to where these have a default, like a default image, so that way if the user forgets to put in a specific picture, it doesn't just show a blank screen like that. That I think would be beneficial, because right now, like I said, it just shows like blank screens. So all those things I think we can fix. And then at the very end of when we finish all these bug fixes, the next thing is going to be provisioning. What provisioning means is just what we load, how we load all the artifacts that this application is going to need. And what I mean by artifacts, I mean the backend, like the lists or tables that are that are going to be referenced by this solution. Those need to also be built. So that's another piece that we also have to build out. I usually leave that to the end because whenever I get the green light from the users, the people that request this, and my job in my field, I want to be sure that all the I's are dotted, all the T's are crossed, because it never fails that as you're going through the development process, they say, oh, can you add this or can you add the other? And yet that's why usually I leave the provisioning part to the very end of the solution, because it makes it a lot easier to have to set up the deployment process at the very end. So that's something that I'm going to be able to show as well on how I handle the deployment of assets. There's a couple of different ways, and I'll try to show both of them if possible. But right now, let's concentrate on fixing the bugs in this. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get AI to help me fix the concept of the sticky header on the top. It would be nice for the instruction, the stepper and the save configuration button to basically stick to the top of the page. So let me go ahead and work on that part. So we're going to put this in plan mode. Need to work on the what was this called? What is this component called? Let's go look. Configuration panel. need to work on the configuration panel. At the very top, there is I think this is like a stepper component, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go look at what the component is called. Yep, stepper navigation. At the very top, there is stepper navigation. I need this to be static or sticky at the top of the page, regardless of what component the user is in. If they scroll down on the page, the stepper needs to remain in place, as well as the save configuration button at the top right. Ask any clarifying questions, if any. This is the planning of the changes. That way we just go through a plan. We establish a plan on what needs to be done, and then we can move on to build to work on the next thing. So I'll handle it this way for now. So I'm sure another thing that I would recommend once you get to this point of the solution is have AI go through your code and make suggestions for possible optimizations or possible scenarios where you can have AI give you suggestions as to how we can refactor the solution. Definitely a good thing to do, just if you're interested on some of the things that can occur once you get really into this, like farther into the solution, and you have the solution at a much advanced level. You're deep into the development phase and most of it is completed. I wonder if I can do a game while we wait. The sticky header include boats. Oh, this is nice. This is really neat. Now it has where you can actually click on the different. Oh, that is pretty sweet. I gotta admit that's pretty high tech. I had not noticed that they had made that improvement to Claude. Interesting. Lady, no. My lady. My dog's doing something she's probably not supposed to be doing. I'm gonna give her a treat as a distraction. There you go. I know, reinforcing bad behavior. All right. All right, so layout. Side by side, stepper navigation left, save button to the right. Stack, separate navigation, save button below it. 2 rows with navigation spanning full width, save button in the second row. I'm thinking that would be the best option for that. I don't know. Visibility show the save configuration sticky header for all 4 steps, including instructions. This is a good question. I think we could conditionally hide the instruction step. because I would imagine most users are going to go through the uh instructions part only one time. Yeah, this would be nice to add a shadow or border. Before this thing goes crazy, and I think we're in plan mode. But I have all my changes saved, so we're good. We're good. Good. Drop something. Give me 1 sec. Sorry about that. I dropped something and anyway, I guess while we code, wonder if I can play a game for a little bit. Need to move this over a little bit like that. I think I was trying to do this one. I was trying to get my challenge is don't get hit, get a perfect combo, and flawless free flow combo. Oh, I messed up. I have to restart. I messed up in that I didn't get the combo reset, and I can't. I have, in order for me to be able to max out on points on these,
going down.
I have to have it like perfectly in sync. So oh, I don't like that. Let me restart it. Let me go back and see what it gave us before I continue on. Let's look at the plan. It looks like the plan is implementing a sticky header, make step navigation save configuration button stick at the top, the configuration panel remaining visible. Yes. Correct. Save configuration button only visible on topics and Q&A. Visual separator show border between. Correct. Configuration panel. That is correct. The configuration panel does render that. Stepper navigation is correct. So it's gonna go into the configuration module, create styles for the sticky header. Perfect. Update the configuration panel component. Import the new CSS module for the sticky header styles and create the sticky header. That's correct. The layout structure is going to be stepper navigation, active card. After card is good. Okay, so active card is basically if it is active card 1 or 0 rather is instructions. So what this is basically saying is that if you are in active card 1, which would be the topics, you can now show the save configuration button and hide the instruction step. Okay. Okay, let me just go ahead and proceed with the changes because I agree with all of them so far, and I have my stuff checked out. So let's see what it does. While it's doing its thing, let's see.
Won't take long. Break his face!
Oh wait. I should be able to hear. I think I should be able to hear game, but bear with me a minute. I gotta go check what my dog is doing. I hear some noises. All right.
Take him out! Oh, great!
Oh man, that is really low. My pay to 4,000. That's not even close to where I need to be. So I need to restart this. It needs to be a minimum 5,000 points on the first round. Hey, don't do that.
You're all going down. You ain't got a chance! You don't want to mess with us! Here you go!
That's another bad round. It needs to be at least 5,000. 600. I'm gonna give it. No. I have to start over. It has to be minimum of 5,000 points on the first round if I want to beat the max score on this part of the game.
You'll wish you stayed home. Come on! What you gonna take? Bring the spirit.
That's not gonna get me near 5,000, I don't think. I'll play with that. Let's see.
Was him dead yesterday. Break all his bones.
I messed up. All right, looks like it's done. Let's check it out. See if our handy dandy assistant did a good job. Do we have any errors? I think we have errors. Oh, this is a build issue. We'll just build it real quick and then we should be all set. Gonna be a minute. This is what's so painful about developing in SharePoint Framework. It's just how slow things can be sometimes. Very, very annoying. Jeez, that's forever. Right now, it's gonna have an error because of that. All right. That's what I wanted to happen. I think we should change this add a topic to the same way that this basically a button that works like this. I believe the button is called what was the button called? What was the button called? Save configuration. I'm losing my marbles here. The save configuration is a default button with icon. Okay, so we need to go to add topic here for this button, default button, and then there's another one at the bottom, default button. What do we have now? Configure topics. Okay, so it only fixed the bottom one. Need to fix this top one. Add a topic. Here we go. So there. Still didn't change it. Why? Default button, default button, default button, default button. Okay. If that didn't fix it, okay, add a topic is there. Thing topic. Add. And I can add that topic there. Deleting the topic gets rid of it. If I refresh the page, and I go here, close this. Topics. Very good. Q&A. Add a question to topic. I think instead of topic, it should say I add a question to development or add a question to general. I think that would be a better concept. So add a question to topic. So this button needs to be a default button. And we can get rid of this line. What we need to do is we need to have selected topic. Set parent ID. Where am I getting a? Oh, because I got rid of action button. And also I need to put this add a topic. Where's the add a topic? There we go. This button needs to be at the bottom as well. Right below. Right now it's here. I just thought of one thing. Add a question to topic. And we have our object. No questions on for topic. Of their modal. I think it needs to be down here. And what happens is now we'll have a button on the top and the bottom, just like we have for topics. So you can see you have an add a topic up here and add a topic down here. Same thing, add a question to topic. I think I'm just gonna put add a question instead of to topic. So and replace all 4 instances of that. That way it's not like a really long text on that button. What is the error now? Am I getting an error? Are there errors on it? No errors found. What is the issue now? Okay. All right, so we have add a question at the top and at the bottom. I think also there needs to be a little bit of separation inside of the add a question. So we need to have a div here for add a question. What about for topic? And why is instruction still showing? I thought we had agreed that once the user leaves instructions, that step would no longer visible. I mean, do we want to have this visible? Looks like it only shows. Oh, that's what it did. It never made instructions not there anymore. I guess that's fine. We can leave it like that. But the only other thing that I think needs to be fixed is, like I was saying, the add a topic has like a nice little uh scenario where it has the add a topic, and then it, I think I should really have this on the top and the bottom. So on the topics, let's go back to the topics. On the topics, we have the topic selector. Go to definition. Where is the button for add a topic? Add a topic. So add a topic. Why is it a 4 times button? So why? It looks like I have the button on there 4 times, and I'm trying to understand why. No topic spawn, and then it has a button to add a topic. I don't know that this would be something that I need. I'm gonna leave it like that for now, but I wanted to go to the default button at the bottom. Here it is. So I need this div to be placed at the top. I don't know about footer content though. Topic selector. Footer content. What does footer content have? Adding a background color. We have footer and then footer content. A div with footer and footer content. I think I need to add this div as well. Where is it? And we're gonna call this header. And add this as a header. And we're gonna give here. And this is gonna be called. How did this get changed to header? Did I change that? And how did I get a header? Is there a header here? There is. Wow. So we need header content. And it's going to be similar to the footer content. Copy that. So we have header and header content. Header content. Where's header on here? Apparently there's another one. Channel header. What that looks like. Go to configure. You can see that it looks like the header is missing a little bit of I don't know. I think that it is a good idea to have The buttons on the top and the bottom, maybe. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what would be the best approach here. Let me go here and add it. Header. So where's your footer? Let's add this to header. Okay. Give me 1 second, I'll be right back. All right. Sorry about that. Let's get back to what we were working on. So here on the topics, I was trying to make this look the same, but for some reason it's not. Let's go look and see where we're at here. So inspect. And here we have footer. And we have footer content at the top. How do we get footer content at the top? That makes absolutely no sense. I literally have header and header content. But for some reason it's showing footer content. That's bizarre. Header and header content under topic selector. And then we have main content. Oh, here's footer content. This needs to be header content. And we need to have div cluster. That should look correct now. So we go to configure topics, and you can see that. Very good. Now we need to have the same concept for header and footer for add a question. So let's do that part now. What we're going to do is we're going to go to this component, which is the Q&A component, I believe. Question answer. So inside of question answer, we're going to open the style and we're going to open the actual file. All right. So for question answer, let's go look for our button. And it should be at the very top right here. And we're gonna just type in header. And we're gonna copy these two. And where's our question answer? Because this is at the very top, I'm gonna actually put it up here at the top. So header and header content. And then we need our footer and footer content as well. The reason I do this way, I know you could say, well, can't you just use the same classes? The answer is yes, you can. But if I ever want to change something uniquely to the footer, it's going to be a pain to have to go and recreate this. So I might as well create it now in the event I want to change something in the footer later. It's already there and I don't have to worry about, did I do this correctly or not. So we have div header and header content, and we're gonna put this below. And then at the bottom down here, this is gonna be the footer. Footer content. And then we're gonna close our divs. So that should take care of it. These should go away, these errors. Once I save it, the style builds and then that error goes away. So now if I configure, and if I go to Q&A, you can see my footer is really nice there. My bottom there. I'm thinking that this is redundant because we already have the number here. Although to be fair, this is more defined, right? Like since you have more real estate, it allows you to be a little bit more explicit, more, on what you're trying to show, where this number 2 could be misleading for somebody, or they may not quite grasp the idea as to why is there a 2 there. I'm going to keep this here, but I think I would like to add that here to the number of questions. Also, another thing that we can do is on the tabs here at the top, I think those need to have like a little bit of padding, similar to how we have padding in between here. Let's go look and see what the padding is here. Looks like margin, so, or no, padding of 24. But here, you need to have a little bit of padding on the div, the tabs div. So in the question answer, there was a tabs div here. Yeah. And let's put padding 0 pick. I think this is how you write it. Let me double check. I'm not a style guy, so take my styling with a grain of salt. I am not very good at it. So it looks like I messed it up. Let's go look. I'm pretty sure it's gonna tell me like this is wrong. 024. Oh, because I put it. So this should be 24. And this should be 0, like that. And it shouldn't be 24 for, gosh, that's a lot of space. A lot of white space there. Let's adjust this 24 to maybe 12. That looks a little more normal. How about 8? I think that's better. Maybe not on the bottom. So only padding, I think it should just be padding top. That looks better. There's a little bit of, so here, we're gonna change this to padding top. And what did we decide it was gonna be? 8 pixels? Did something happen to her, like a little ring? Oh. Hi, I just finished HTML and CSS. Any advice? My advice would be to start working on a project and pick a library that you want to use. I say that because I think that a lot of the times we get too hung up on learning only and doing only tutorials for code. And that's not really the way that you learn things. So for instance, if I was to try to teach you a new language, you could go to Rosetta Stone, you could go to Duolingo and start learning the language, but you really don't get to know the language until you immerse yourself Like if you go to that country, like if I was trying to learn Spanish or I'm trying to learn Japanese, and you would want to immerse yourself in it. And so what you want to focus on is um, picking a library. Like for instance, I'm using React. I love React. Facebook uses React. There's other libraries out there. There's Angular. Angular is a little advanced. Probably not. I wouldn't go down that route. I would choose a front end framework. Front end, like, let me show you. So front end frameworks that you can use is Vue. Vue is a good one. React, Angular again. I would hesitate to tell you to go with Angular because Angular is no longer. It's actually a full framework where it tries to take over front end, back end, and usually what's easier to do is concentrate on front end development and then worry about learning about back ends and things like that later. So my advice to you would be pick a library, and then work within the confines of the library. So if it says I'm planning to learn React after diving into JavaScript. Another thing that I will tell you is, don't get me wrong, JavaScript is an amazing language, but it's not type safe. And so my recommendation would be to use TypeScript, because when you use TypeScript, it's going to be a lot easier and a lot less frustrating for you to build things with. And now with AI, it makes it a lot easier to use TypeScript, and it also helps TypeScript get a little bit more context into what you're building. Another thing that I would say is you can start by building applications with one of the things that I would use is there is for React, there is a TanStack start. Okay. And what I like about TanStack is that it comes with pretty much everything that you need for development in one suite. You have TanStack router that's already part of TanStack start. So the router allows you to switch from one area to another. So that's beneficial. You already have that there. TanStack query is your data area, like where the data resides that's coming from your backend, whether it be a server, whether it be a database somewhere, a table. That's where you would have your information. So TanStack query does that. Table, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you want to build a table on your application, that TanStack table takes care of it. I've never used TanStack DB, so I wouldn't do that either. I wouldn't do that right now. I don't know. I haven't used it, so I can't recommend it. TanStack AI, same. TanStack Form, very, very useful. It simplifies the forms building process. So between router, query, table, form, you pretty much have 90% of what I would think you would need for development. So I would recommend that you start with something like this for development purposes. That would be my recommendation. And then use TypeScript if you can. TypeScript, I know it can seem intimidating, but believe me, it's really not that hard. And it's just going to make your development process so much easier, because you're going to be so happy that you can catch any errors in the process of your development. There's times that I can develop for a long time and not go check the UI because TypeScript helps me know that my code is error free. Can't do that with JavaScript, because if you code with JavaScript for a very long time and then you try to go check on the UI, you're going to have a hard time finding that bug. Just my personal opinion. In my opinion, if you can use TypeScript, it is definitely good. Yeah, it says, yeah, TypeScript is good for big projects. They say it's good for any project. And I'm quick crash course with TypeScript. The reality is you can easily build types. Here's the trick that I show. For example, if you're working with a JSON, right? Let's just say, let's go here and let's just say weather API free. Let's just hypothetical, right? So here's an open source free API. Say let's just pick a project. Pick a project. You're gonna create an application that gets the weather. Okay. So you go to try API and you want the temperature. Where is my here's is there a way to get a JSON from it? Let me just look up something that has, here we go. So there's got to be something that's free. API weather service. I just want some free JSON. Let's just say example. This is how I go about creating types. Okay. So if I open, maybe this will give me something. Shoot. I just want some JSON. Let's say dummy weather JSON, for example. So here's a JSON structure. So let's say this is your JSON, right? You went and you got your API. You are now at the point that you're going to start writing code, and you're like, okay, I'm going to use TypeScript. How do I create my type? You just go and you copy your JSON. You can get your JSON like this, or whenever you retrieve the information from the API, you'll get something that looks like this. Your data is going to look like what you see on my screen. If I want to create a type from it, there is an extension in Visual Studio Code. The extension is called JSON to TS. So JSON to TS, this one right here. And what JSON to TS does is, if I have, you want to create a file called app props, or you can call it whatever you want. This is where you store all of your types for your application. And you can press Control-Shift-P on Visual Studio Code and look up JSON to TS, and it's gonna take the data that was in your paste, in your copy paste cache, and it'll create the interfaces for you. So you have an interface called wind, you have an interface called forecast, right? Because you had forecasts, and then you had an object for wind, and then you have your root object. So your root object would be this right here that contains the city, the humidity, the wind, and the forecast. And you can see wind and forecast have their own types. So 90% of the work is already done for you. Simply by using that extension, you already have a way of creating your types. So 90% of the work is done for you there. You don't have to worry about, oh man, how do I create a type? It's already created for you. And then you just simply have to put export in front of here and then import it into your file where you're utilizing it. For example, for me that I use SharePoint, the way I leverage API to create my types is I'll go to my SharePoint site and say, for instance, I wanted to know what the JSON looks like for this list that right now that I have, which is called FAQ topics. I want to know what that JSON looks like. So I just go to inspect, and there's an extension for Chrome that I used in this scenario, but yours would be different. Obviously yours, your application, whether you're working on a weather app or whatever API you're leveraging, that API is going to give you an example of what the JSON looks like, and then you can create your type from that. In my use case, what I do is I go in here and I retrieve the data. So for instance, if I go in here, I'm going to type in const items, wait, this get by title, and my title was I think it was FAQ topics. Okay, items dot get, and your API is going to have a specific fetcher function. If you're using something like the One of the most popular one is Fast API. That's one of the very, very popular API libraries you can use. There's also Axios. I think it's called Axios API. Yeah, so there's or is it API Fetch? I think it's called Fetch. Yeah, so there's different libraries that you can use to help you with your API. But that being said, going back to my example, this is my version of the API that I'm leveraging. So now I can just get all of my items, and then I can console out my items from the API. I'm going to show my console drawer, and you can see my objects here. So I just copy this object, and I go to my types, and I do the same thing, JSON to TS, and here's my type. Automatically created for me. I don't have to worry about how do I create that type, so then I can leverage TypeScript, which is going to make my code type safe, and I'm not going to have any problems in the long run. That would be my recommendation, because 9 times out of 10 people, the biggest thing that people refrain from using TypeScript is because it's going to be static. How do I create the types? How do I make the types work together? Let's say, for instance, you don't want the entire type. You just want a piece of it, or you're creating a function that posts to your API, and you only want to have a part of your data be passed into that API endpoint. Then you can use partial. So you can create a type called, for example, if I only want the ID and message from here, I can create a type called type partial config warning, right? And then I can just use the word partial config warning. And now partial config warning makes my options here only be, it doesn't make them all required, right? A lot of the times people say, well, I don't like to use TypeScript because then it ties me down. No, it doesn't. You can still build dynamics into things as long as you know what you're building those dynamics to work with. Another thing that people say about types is, well, if I'm working on my application, how do I know what kind of type it is? Very simple. Hover over the property. What does that mean? Say, for instance, I wanted to have a property called delete FAQ item be passed to, I want to pass that function into stack placeholder. I want to put that function in there because I'm going to do something with it. Well, if you hover over it, here's your type. You just copy this. You copy your type, and now go to, let's just say, side-by-side loader. And you can just say side-by-side loader. I want side-by-side loader to have a type called side-by-side loader props. Okay. And then I want to pass delete FAQ items as a function to that component. You already have it. You don't have to think, oh my goodness, how do I get this type? I don't know how to write it. Hover over it and it'll give you what you need. And then now that I know side-by-side loader can have that, I'm just going to make it optional because I'm just giving you an example of how this would work. Now, when I go here to side-by-side loader, I can say, you know what? There is a function that I want to pass to it that's called delete FAQ items. Oh, the reason I'm not showing it is because also you want to attach your properties to your functional component by telling React that this functional component receives these properties. Okay. And now when I go to question answer, let me not make it optional. You'll see that this is going to give me an error. If you're using JavaScript, 9 times out of 10, it doesn't give you errors because it doesn't know. But because you're using TypeScript, it now knows that it needs that property, and it kind of stands out like a sore thumb that you need that property. So now I can go back to, what am I doing here? There we go. Let me close this. I don't need that anymore. So now I can go here to side-by-side loader. I can scroll down to where my error is, and I know that it's because it's missing a property called delete FAQ items, delete FAQ item. And you see, I now have a property that I can leverage in another functional component, and TypeScript stopped me from making the mistake of not having that necessary property in that component. So even though TypeScript can seem overwhelming, though, that would be my feedback. Use it. It's very beneficial. It'll let you know at that very moment, hey, you have an error in your code, and you can resolve it right away. Whereas if you use JavaScript, which is the latter, it's not going to do that. And so you want to make sure that you avoid those use cases where, wherever possible, you can avoid that process from happening. Hopefully that answers your question. I think that I love to code. This is one of my favorite things to do. I work all day doing this, and I'm doing this still. This is one of my favorite pastimes, and I get paid to do it. So, I mean, if you can find a job like this where you're getting paid to do these kind of things, even better. AI is still very, very far away, in my opinion, from taking over this space. It can certainly be beneficial. It can make you more efficient. I've been able to build applications in a much faster way. But there's a lot of babysitting that I have to do, because there's times that I'm in the process of getting it to work on something for me and I find errors. It's not the most ideal scenario. But hopefully that answers your question. If you have any questions, please put it in a chat, and I'd be happy to segue into whatever questions you may have. And probably not this coming week, but the following week, only because this coming week is a holiday already. But the following week, I'll probably start a new project. And I want to do a full stack project, not SharePoint, but an actual full stack project using things like Docker, using React, TanStack Start, and building a full application from top to bottom, and show you my methodologies as far as how I start from beginning to end an application, what my best practices are, how I go about starting the building process, and all of that encompassed in live development sessions like the one you see right now. And I tend to get very excited, and I code really, I tend to go bam, bam, bam really fast. But if you need me to slow down, let me know. But definitely what I would suggest is pick a project. Don't do tutorials. Pick a project. Another thing that I would suggest is learn the jargon. Here's a perfect example that I can tell you is if you have AI, here's how it can become very, very helpful. If you're learning AI and you're saying, you know what, I want to learn React. Here's the way I would approach it if I had AI in my corner and I'm trying to learn this for the very first time. Okay. I would say something like teach me the jargon around React. I want to understand from a bird's eye view what the technical terms are. Okay, list them, and we wanted to list them first. List them, and then we'll go by one, explaining each in layman's terms, right? Because it's good. If there's this cartoon that I watched with my daughter when she was smaller, where there's a beaver. They're building a dam, and he tells them, go do the blah 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 blah, and the guy's like, huh, what do you want me to do? He comes down and he's like, stick a twig in the hole. And in programming, it's a lot like that. There's a lot of jargon, and unless you don't understand what the jargon means, you're gonna be like, what on earth do you want me to do? So my suggestion is learn the core concepts, learn the jargon, because once you learn the jargon, then you'll understand how to code, how to leverage it, how to use it in your solution. And that's the best approach to learning how to do these things. So once you understand the core concepts, then go ahead and move forward. So here's some good ones. The core concepts are going to be JSX, components, props, state, virtual DOM, reconciliation, functional components, class components. Here's my 2 cents. use functional components. Class components are old school. They're not really used anymore. I would not use those. Higher order components, you definitely need that. Pure components, use state, use effect, use context, use reducer, use ref, use memo, use callback. All those are very important. But make sure that you're understanding them, not to memorize them, but to understand how they are used. You're not going to memorize. What memorization comes with repetition. Memorization comes with you building solutions. So build the solutions and just keep on building, and then memorization will come to you. Why I say that you should learn and understand the concepts is because if you have a problem, let's say for instance you have a problem where you want to create a structured or a layered set of components and you don't know the jargon, you cannot tell AI, you cannot tell Google, you cannot tell whatever your favorite search engine, whatever you want to use to get you to help. You can't tell it, yeah, I want to create this and I want to create that, or I want this thingamajig here, this thingamajig there. And it's going to look like you puzzled. But if you know the jargon, you can then tell AI, this is what I want to do in a more concise manner. And if you don't know the jargon, that's where you're going to have a lot of problems. So if once I have the core concepts, put this list somewhere like on a notepad, I would just copy something like this. And then, or you can, put it like on a notepad. For example, put it on a notepad and then say, okay, I'm going to create a new chat. So a new chat, explain JSX to me. I want to learn the concept and explain it to me in layman's terms to include an analogy. An analogy to help me understand the concept as well as a specific use case if there is one. Okay, and then it's going to give you an example of what JSX means, and so that you can understand that jargon. If I was going to tell you, what, that component, make sure that it's a JSX element that renders X, Y, and Z. Well, if you don't know what JSX means, you're going to be lost. You're going to be confused. Okay. So this is the best way to learn. Learn the concepts, then you can incorporate this in your learning strategy. So JSX is a JavaScript syntax that lets you write HTML like code directly into JavaScript files. Syntactic sugar that gets compiled to regular JavaScript function calls. Think of JSX like a template or a blueprint. And that's exactly right. JSX is this. If I go back to my solution, JSX is what you see in here. Okay? That's what you see in here. It's literally just HTML that you can basically build a cookie cutter, like a template out of it. Okay? So there you're already learning a concept. And this is how I would recommend learning. Understand it. Don't memorize this though. Don't memorize this. You just want to get it in your mind that you just want to learn what the jargon means, so that way when you're programming, you know exactly how to leverage these different pieces of the library in your development process, in your project. Okay. So that would be my strategy for understanding a language. And this is a lot faster of a way to understand than if you didn't do this, then it's going to be a little bit more complicated, a little bit more complex. Okay. So anyway, that's how JSX. I try to understand syntaxes and no memorize, and I forgot. I go back. Exactly. That's a brilliant point, because actually, and that's why I say don't memorize. The documentation is always going to be there. AI is always going to be there. If you get confused, as long as you know what the jargon is, I think you can pretty much tell AI, hey, I'm trying to build this JSX component because I want to make it reusable. I want to be able to just show a hello message to the user, and I want to be able to dynamically change who the username is in the JSX element. See, you wouldn't know how to say that if you don't know the jargon. That's why it's important to understand the jargon and then try to understand the concept. Once you have the concept down, you can later go back and look it up. You know, that's what makes it easier. But how about interviews for jobs? Do they ask you those? No. Most of the job interviews that I've been for I have 18 plus years that I've been working in this space. The interviews are not going to ask you unless it's a technical scenario where most of the times it'll be a test. I have had cases where they'll send me a test, and the tests are more like write me a small console application using this language that you say you are well versed in. And usually they'll give you a couple of days and then you have to submit that. But for interviews, 9 times out of 10, they'll tell you, okay, um, give me an example of a project that you've worked on from beginning to end. What languages did you use? What are some of the pitfalls that you encountered? How did you overcome those pitfalls? That's one example. Another question will be that's from the development standpoint in an interview. Another question would be something like, have you ever been through a change through a change process? Change process meaning like your deployment. What are the typical cases that you go through, or what are the typical things that you recommend happen whenever you're going to deploy an application? I would answer that question to say, well, I always want to have a way to revert back to the original in case something breaks. I have a copy of the original code. I can just redeploy that again in its place. And then I have everything working smoothly, because the last thing that I want is to deploy an update. Users start finding problems, and now I'm running around like a chicken with its head cut off because I don't know how to fix it and how to fix it yesterday, because some of these applications are very important. So you always want to have a change process in place. Another question would be something like, that's correct. That's for Git, or if you have a CI/CD pipeline, that would be where you can have an automatic process for your continuous integration, continuous deployment. But here's my suggestion. Whenever you build a solution, for example, like my SharePoint framework solution here, you're going to get a package file. If you're building a regular application, you'll get like a distribution folder where all of your artifacts are in, all of your code compiled. It's going to be all neatly stored in a folder that you can then deploy to the server. What I typically do before I make a deployment, I'll save the original. Every time that I make a deployment, I'll create a new folder somewhere. The reason I say that is because my deployments are manual. I take this package file and I drop it into the SharePoint site so that it implements my new changes. But let's say, for instance, I had a deployment last week. I created a folder for last week's deployment with this exact same package file. And now here I am on this week, and I'm going to deploy the solution today. I create a new folder. I load this file into that folder, and then I deploy it to the server. If a day later or 2 days later, users start complaining, I start getting a lot of tickets, I start getting a lot of noise, people telling me, hey, the application's broken, I don't know what you changed, but it's not working right. You have that solution in a folder. You can simply redeploy the old solution, work on whatever bugs were reported, and you're good. You never want to be in a situation where you're developing and you didn't have a way to go back. That's why businesses ask these kind of questions, because you have to be ready from some level of experience to understand that these kind of scenarios do happen to everybody. I don't care how good of a developer you are. There's going to be bugs that creep out of nowhere that you may have not tested for. I've been in scenarios where you have a dedicated QA team that tests your solution, and there's still scenarios where the tester didn't get the right script or they didn't test for that use case, and now you're stuck with a solution that's broken, people complaining, business is slowed, or sometimes even come to a halt because the application isn't working. So that's what businesses are looking for now, for that experience, for you to know how to answer those kind of questions. um excuse me. So that is definitely something that you want to be but well versed in. Here's another thing: they're not going to ask you to write code live, or they're not going to ask you questions about the code, but they may. What I like to do when I go to an interview, I'll bring my laptop with me. And if you work on projects like I do, this is a side project. I'm not working on this for a business or anything. This is just a side project of mine. You can take this with you and say, like, look at this solution that I built. I built this myself, no requirements, no anything. There's been scenarios that somebody will give me like a little worksheet and I'll build the whole solution around it. Like a lot of people use Excel worksheets, but Excel worksheets are not applications. And there's been scenarios that somebody will tell me, hey, can you build an application from this Excel worksheet? I'll build it out. I'll build a whole application around it. And that I can leverage later to go to an interview with. Especially if you're going in as a new person that you just started to code, that would be my way of doing so. And nowadays there's so many ways that you can build little solutions to make to make a way for you to demonstrate your skill set live when you're meeting with the business that you want to work for. So don't be discouraged. Like I said, learn the jargon, learn the concepts, pick a library, and then once you're really good at the library, pick a different library. Never stop being a learner. With coding, you're gonna be prepared to be a lifelong learner. You want to always continuously be learning, be understanding different development methodologies, different platforms that you can work with. Here recently, I started working with Supabase. If you want to create a project using Supabase is free. You can use Supabase literally live for free. You only create one user. There's your backend, and you can very easily create a table there, get your API. That's what I like about Supabase. Supabase gives you an actual API, the API functions. You literally just have to copy them, paste them into your code, build your cache, your hooks that cache all of your data. So if my recommendation would be, if you really want something that you work on, like if you were almost working at a job and that you can demonstrate to somebody, use Supabase. Use Supabase as your backend. Use Vercel as your host. Vercel's free too. You can literally build using Vercel, React. I tried Supabase, but not understand it well yet, since it used to be self-host. I'm not sure what N8N means. I don't know if the chat is translating something you're writing into something else. But yes, you can use Supabase. What I like about Supabase, here's an example. So if we go to Supabase, like I said, it's free. You can build a solution for free. Sorry, my little niece is here. And when you build AI automatic on work, AI automation flow. I tried Supabase but not understand it well. If you don't understand, the way I would use Supabase is I would use what is it called for? I use that BRGHO and make.com. Let me see what make.com is. I've seen these. I'm not a big fan of this stuff. This is like a low code, no code kind of like drag and drop type scenarios. I think there's another one like this. But yeah. I don't know. I mean, you can try it. It's worth a shot. I'd like to be more of a. I like to know everything that's going into my solution. But the way that you can use Supabase, you can actually use Supabase with AI using an MCP server, and it's pretty simple to set up. And you can literally have AI build the entire backend, and then you just code against the backend. Maybe that's the project that I'll start. When I start the project from beginning to end, I'll show how you can use React, TanStack Start, use Supabase, and build an entire solution that way. But yeah, I mean, I definitely recommend this as an option. What I like about Supabase is API example. Let me see if there's an image out there. You can see what it looks. It looks like this. So when you create a table in Supabase, let me see, copy image address. Let me see if it lets me see it larger. Okay, so you can see here. This is what I like about Supabase, is that it'll tell you the API endpoint, and then it'll actually give you an example that you can just copy the entire object the way you see it there. And what I like about it is that you can use that JSON to TypeScript and build your types that way. Yes, I started there, now learning the code since fundamentals are much better. Agreed. The fundamentals are way, way better, because that way you know exactly how to pinpoint where the mistakes that AI makes. You'll be able to quickly see them and be able to mitigate and fix them before they get out of hand. It's so easy when you're doing development with AI to just let it go and build a bunch of stuff, and then you go back and look at it and it's literally a bunch of spaghetti code, messy, inefficient, and you don't want that. Definitely want to have a good grasp on the concepts so that you can go through and look at what AI did, understand what it did, and fix any potential issues that are that come up. I saw JSON, I can't read it, so I want to learn how. Now I go full stack. JSON. So you're saying you're having a hard time understanding to read JSON? A lot of the times JSON, a lot of people get confused by it because they don't. It can become quite, especially if you have nested JSON objects, it can become a bit of a nightmare, because you may not understand how the nesting happens. I make use of JSON beautifiers. So there is a JSON beautifier, and basically I use this. I put in the JSON code over here to give it a little bit more structure to help you be able to make it more legible. Because I definitely understand where you're coming from, where, geez, some of the JSON can be so complex that you don't understand it very well. So I can definitely understand that frustration. Yeah, I just started coding this week. Awesome. It's awesome to start the code. Hopefully you'll build a passion for it. If you have a passion for it, you're gonna be very successful. There's been scenarios where people will hire me and say, hey, we have like these couple of people that we want you to teach, and unfortunately some of them won't pick it up because they just don't have the passion for it. But if you have the passion for it, welcome. This is one of the most fun things that you can do. There's a sense of exhilaration or like satisfaction that you get once the application that you're building actually works. So I find that very, very helpful. But yeah, hopefully you'll continue. I'm here every day, Monday through Friday. Please join. I love to have these kind of conversations, and if there's anything I can answer, even if you're working on a solution I will try to help you, you know, understand uh, the building process for your applications. Another way that AI can help you is, since you're gonna try to build something, I'm pretty sure you're not gonna want to wait a week because you want to get started. My approach to development is pick, like I said, pick the from. I'm gonna give you like a little step by step bird's eye view on how I handle it. Um, I first of all um, I pick a I pick a library. So like I said, one of them that I would use is, like, for instance, React, for example. And then once I have a library established, I look for a scaffolding solution. Like when you're working on a building, you see all these like uh, levels that are put on the around the building. Like if they're building the facade of the building, they have scaffolding there, right? It looks something like this. Let me look at. It looks like something like this all around the building. You've seen that, right? Scaffolding. Yeah, I have a background. Perfect, perfect. So you understand where I'm coming from. So you pick a scaffolding tool. Scaffolding tools are things like what I was talking about, the 10 stack start. That's a scaffolding tool. You can look up React scaffolding. Oops. React scaffolding tools. And this is just basically a way to just build a shell around your solution. Once you have the shell, and then you're ready to start building your application, right? So Yeoman is a scaffolding tool. 10 stack start is a scaffolding tool. So there's various out there. I think there's like Gulp is another one. There's a lot of them. One of them that's really old is Create React app. That was an old one that not a lot of people use anymore. That's another one. Okay, so now once we've established our scaffolding tool, that's really all you need to get started, because your database and all that can wait. You can just use JSON for now. So now I have my scaffolding tool. So once I get the application scaffolded, meaning everything, all the scaffolding is in place, I'm ready to start coding. The first thing that I do is I work on a if you're using React, is you can work on a layout. So the way that I work on layouts is I'll create a component and I'll add the different sections of my application. So example, application layouts. So here's an image. So an application layout could be something like this. Let me copy this. Look at this. This is a layout. You have at the top HR Acme, that's your header. Then you have your left navigation. Your navigation can be both in the header, or you can have a left navigation, and then you have your content area. This area right here where you see all these cards, that's your content area. So you can have AI help you building a layout, and you can tell it to build an layout. Oh, you want your toys? Here you go. You're welcome. All right, so you can tell it to build a layout with colors. You can tell it, you know what, help me build a layout and put a background color so that I can define the different pieces of my application. My application needs to have a header, it needs to have a left navigation, and it has to have a main content area. You tell it that, and it's gonna build something that looks, like it could put red on the top, yellow on the side, and it gives you a visual of what your application is gonna look like. So that's the next step that I do, is I'll have AI help me build a layout. Once I have the layout, built, then I start building my API. So in my solution, if you go to Visual Studio Code, is I will start building. I'll create a folder called API, and I'll create my API functions there. Let me close this. Okay, so here's my API function. I have a function that will retrieve all of my data. I have a function that will create one piece of data. I have a function that will update it. And then finally, I'll have a function that will delete that piece of data. So then I build the API. If you're not going to use a backend, if you're just going to create something like out of JSON, you can still build the fetcher functions, but you're just fetching the data from your JSON file. And you can get a JSON file. You can actually Google around for JSON files that will give you something to start with. Right now, because you're just beginning, don't worry too much about finding a very complex API. Work with something simple because you're just trying to get the concepts out of the way. Okay? So once the layout is set up, I'd go look for example JSON. And if you want to do it this way, here's how AI can help you. Remember earlier we found something for the weather API? Where is it? Was it here? What was let me look and see if maybe it's in history. Here's what I would say. Dummy weather JSON. Here we go. Take that copy of that JSON, right? And then go to AI and say, let me add a new chat. Create JSON file with this as an example. So you have city, and so I want one for 5 different cities. Okay, so now it's going to give you 5 different cities. And now you can take this JSON that it spits out and put that as a file in your solution. Again, this is just for you to be able to have some data that you can work with in your solution. And you can do this with ChatGPT. You can do this with any AI tool of your preference. Okay. And it'll just create just a dummy file that you can use in your solution. And here's your JSON that you can leverage. So now you copy this entire data into your solution, and now you can leverage this inside of your solution. You can even tell it, you know what? Now that you've created the JSON, I've added the JSON as a file in my solution. Now help me create the API. But don't just let it create it for you. Make sure that when it does create it, you read through it and you try to understand. And if you don't understand what it wrote, then you need to ask it, how did this API function? How does that work? But don't get too much in the weeds of it, because one of the mistakes that I made when I was learning was I was always asking why. We're like kids, right? Have you ever had a kid around you that always like, why? And it gets so annoying. I don't get too caught up on the why. What I mean by that is a lot of people like me, when I first started, I would get stuck on that function has the word this. I don't understand why it does that. And I would be hung up on that. Like I would be hung up on a specific word. I would be hung up on semicolons. Why does it have a semicolon? Why is it placed there? You know, I get hung up on those kind of things. Don't make that mistake. If there is something that genuinely confuses you, then you can ask, hey, how did you come across this? I always ask why when I get sidetracked on looking it up. No, absolutely. And it can be, for example, here's one example. Why is timestamp set up with a Z at the end and a T in the middle? I would get hung up on stuff like that. Is it relevant? No, it's not really relevant. This is just the way that code expects the dates to be formatted. Right? It's like if I'm teaching you to say Spanish hello, hola, you're not gonna tell me why is it hola. You're just gonna understand that it's hello is hola. You're not gonna ask me why. I mean, if you're a little kid, then you might ask me like why. but you don't want to get hung up on those things. Okay. So now the next thing that I would do is from learning the code is, now that I have my JSON and I have my layout, now I'm going to work on my components. The components, what I typically use is functional components. Okay. That's what I use when I'm developing in React. So again, we picked our library, React, we picked our scaffolding tool, we created our layout, we got our data, which is our JSON, and now we're ready to create our components. So that's the strategy, okay? The components are going to include things like, for example, it's going to have, you're going to learn how to create forms so that you can load data into your application. You're going to have to create forms. One of my favorite tools that I use to create forms is React hook forms. If you're using TanStack, you can use TanStack form. Okay, so if you're using TanStack, you can use TanStack form. Okay, the next thing that you're gonna need is dates. So if you're working with dates, what I use is day.js. For example, this. It's a JavaScript data utility. So this is gonna help you handle that string that you saw with the T and the Z. You're gonna need something like this for dates. So for dates, you're gonna use day.js. Okay. For state management, because you're gonna need state management, you're gonna need to manage state. And it's a very important thing about state. So state, think of it as holding your data. Think of that as your variables. And the state is going to have the value and the setter for the value. So the state inside of React. So obviously you're going to use within your components, you're going to use React, and React is going to have state. And state is going to be basically its variables that have a property and a setter. Okay, what that means is that if we look at my solution here, and again, I don't mean to insult your intelligence. You might be way beyond this, so I apologize if I'm making it too back to the basics. But state is something like this. So you can see I have a state. I mean, look where I'm using use state right here. So state will have the property, which is active nav card, and the setter for me to set the value of that property. So that's how state works. So for state, you can either have the built-in React state, or you can have the built-in state, or you can have a state management library. My favorite one to use is Zustand. If you're gonna need the scenario where you're gonna have state across the entire application, then use Zustand. What that means is when you have a global state, that means you can just leverage that piece of data anywhere in your application without having to use prop drilling. What does prop drilling mean? Well, prop drilling is when you have components. So like you ever seen that Russian doll where you have a doll and then you have another doll and then you have another doll on top of it, and it just becomes a bunch of little dolls, one inside of another. So prop drilling is very much like that. So say for instance, if you had to get a piece of data from the very top component all the way down to your child component, like 4 or 5 rows down in your component tree, then you have to do prop drilling. You have to pass the property from the top one to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, to the next one, till you get to the component that you want. And so that becomes what we call prop drilling. The only problem with prop drilling is that if you change the property name or you change the type, you're gonna have to go and change it everywhere, and it can become a nightmare. And so prop drilling, I don't usually recommend. I recommend that you create a state management tool. You can use Zustan. There's others out there, but I recommend Zustan. If you, this is when you start building a bunch of components. Right now, you're just starting. You can just use the built-in React state, just as an example. Sorry. And then the components, like I said, avoid nesting components. Try not to nest. What nesting components is that you have a component with another within another component within another component on the same file. You don't want to do that, because if there's any state changes within that one file, it's going to trigger a refresh of not only that one component but the parent components at the same time. And that's why you want to stay away from combining too many elements, too many components into one file. You want to create a file individually for each component. If we look at my application as an example, earlier you saw me go into my tool here and go into this components tab. Another thing that would be beneficial for you to have is this extension. This extension is called React Developer Tools. Install it if you're using Chrome. Install it to your Chrome tools. How this helps you is if I come into the components and I hover over them, you'll see my architecture and my structure of my components. So here I have an image inside a document card. The document card is inside of my image card. The image card is inside image cards, which would be the plural. And image cards is inside of FAQ image. FAQ image is inside of FAQ main. These are all different components. If I go look at FAQ main, here's FAQ main. And inside of FAQ main, I had FAQ image, which is this component right here. And inside FAQ image, I had FAQ image cards. So if I open FAQ image, I have FAQ image cards. That's a different component. So you see how I created a component for every single one of my areas of my application? You always want to do that. Could I have built them on one file? Yes. But then it becomes messy because, for example, if FAQ image, say hypothetically, had a state, like a state setter and property, and I modify it, it's going to cause all of those to have a chain reaction, and all my components are going to refresh. And that's what sometimes when you use an application and you see the application kind of like blink, it's because somebody didn't build it this way. They decided to just build everything together, which from a reading perspective, you would think, yeah, that's good. But from the application standpoint, is not good, because it's going to impact your application in the way that users see your application and how they use it. You definitely want to stay away from doing those kind of things. Another good thing that you can see from this tool is that it actually lets you see the properties. So you can see here that my FAQ images cards, you can see that it has all these questions and answers. So here's the answer, and here's the question: why do we use it? And you can see the text, it's long established. So the answer is somewhere here. So there's a title right here. It is established. It is long established. You can see that this tool will let you see the data. If you ever need to troubleshoot, this is a good way to troubleshoot using this React developer components. So hopefully that helps you out. That would be my way of building. Learn the concepts. Once you have the concepts, the library you picked, pick a scaffolding tool, create your layout, get your data by getting some JSON somewhere out there, or having AI generate the JSON for you, and then start building components. Once you started building components and you have the familiarity there with, building the application that way, then start looking at backends. You can use Supabase, you can use SharePoint. The sky's the limit at that point. You're really on your way then to start building solutions. That would be my strategy. And like I said, I'll probably build a full solution, probably not this week, but the following one. I'll build a full solution from beginning to end and basically go about it in this exact same way. And I've built solutions this way. But this would be my recommendation. Hopefully that helps. So yeah. Let's see what else we can fix. We added that. We added this. Now we probably want to fix the other bugs that were showing up before. No, absolutely. You're welcome. I'm glad you joined. I'm glad you joined me. So yeah, anytime you have any questions and if anything I can help you through your journey, please let me know. I would recommend you get a Git account, load your code into Git, and if you want to share it with me, I would be more than happy to review it with you. And build alongside of you if that'll help in any way that I can. I'm more than happy to do that. Just let me know. You can always share your Git URL, and I can just you can make it a public repository since you're learning. Obviously you don't want to put any kind of like, don't put your financials on there or something. Like if you want to build a budgeting application, don't go and put all your bills in a JSON. Don't do something like that. Just build something that you just kind of want to get your foot or just one toe in the pool, so to speak, and learn that way. That's the way I would go about doing this. I only have GitHub for now, still starting. Yeah, GitHub is not that hard. So for example, if you have Visual Studio Code, it makes it really easy to work with GitHub, because once you're signed into GitHub, if you create a new solution, so say for instance, I create a new folder, let me go. Usually what I do is in my computer, you have a users folder, you have your folder here, and I'll create a file called source. Inside of source, I'll create, let's just say hypothetically, I want to create a weather app. I'll just call it weather app. Okay. Then here on Visual Studio Code, I'll go to open folder, and then I'll go to source and I'll click on weather app and open. Once I open it, if you go to the Git branch, you'll see that this folder does not have an existing Git repository. And it makes it really simple. You can just go to initialize repository and then put in your message like initial commit, publish branch. And when you click on publish branch, it's going to show you all of your GitHub repositories. And it's gonna have one option at the very top that says create new repository. And there you can give your repository a name like JUVY Sauce project. Name it that, make it public, because it's going to give you an option whether you want to make it a public or private. Make it public, share with me the URL, and I can look at the code and help you in any way that I can. I'd be happy to do that. So that's how I would go about creating my first Git repository. If you already have a folder and you've already started working on something, open that folder in Visual Studio Code, go to the Git branch. If you don't have that in Visual Studio Code, the reason you don't have it is because you haven't installed the GitHub. I think it's called Git. I think it's called Git. God, it's been so long. Yeah, you need to install Git. You install this, just leave the defaults. Once you have this installed, Visual Studio Code will show that. Yeah. So you do have GitHub. Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, just build a repository there. And then that you can use that as your learning playground. And like I said, I'd be happy to help you. So you have github.com/ this one, yep, right here. Yeah, look at that. You already have one right here. So here's your code, YouTube clone. And there you go. You have your initial commit already. Yep. I don't see. I think this is just basic HTML and CSS from what I can tell. I would create a new repository. Let me show you what I would do. Is I think what we were discussing was we created a new folder and let's just call it weather app, for example. And then let me open a new Visual Studio window. And then I go to this branch and I open the folder. Weather app. And then I'm going to pick a scaffolding tool here. So once you're in your weather app, you'll notice that here your terminal is going to say weather app. Okay. But let's just say, hypothetically speaking, I wanted to use TanStack start. Okay. So I go to TanStack start and I go to docs. And under docs, where is it? Dependencies, getting started. So under getting started, quick start right here. So npm, because that's what I'm using, is node package manager. I'll paste that in here. Now press enter. Okay. I don't know why it might take a little bit. There we go. So need to install the following packages: TanStack create start. That's fine. Press yes. Gonna install. I haven't done this in my development box, so I guess it's okay that I'm gonna have it for the when I actually start creating an application, it'll be there. Might be a minute while it does that. Did it freeze or? Yep. What would you like to name your project? Let's call it the weather app. Just as an example. Oh, can no longer contain. Okay, so weather app. Would you like Tailwind CSS? If you have Tailwind, if you've purchased Tailwind, I would say yes. If you haven't, I would say no. My opinion, because you're just beginning, you probably haven't purchased Tailwind. I would say no. Select toolchain. Let's go ahead and go with ESLint. Select develop deployment adapter. This is an interesting question. I'm not sure what to select here. I would go with agnostic. What add-ons would you like to add to your project? Form. Yeah, but I want to definitely add form. Should we add ShatCN? I think we can add ShatCN. Definitely table. And query. Definitely query. That's what I would add. I would add table, shadcn, query. You can always add more later if you wanted to. Would you like a chat example that uses 10-stack start, 10-stack store? No, I don't need any examples. So it's installing the dependencies, which is what I select. The dependencies being whatever tool set I selected it install. It's going to install that. You might be able to see some of the installation going on. See, this is your scaffolding. Remember what I was talking about the building? This is your scaffolding tool, right? So this scaffolding tool is going to create a source file. It already created a folder for my components. It already created some data types. These are my types, and you can already see that I have a get function here with data here. And then we have our hooks, and we have our integrations folder, library folder, routes folder. Okay, so everything gets put into our application from the get-go, and we can clean it up later, make changes as we want. Okay, and it's installing my shadcn components. You don't have to do all this. Shadcn, what I like about shadcn is that it has components with no styles. What that means is if I go to shadcn, it lets you, it has a set of components with no styles whatsoever that you can style it yourself to whatever colors you want, whatever theme you want. That's why I like to use it. You know, it has nice things like, you know, this avatar pictures, buttons that you can use, boxes with check boxes, these kind of like little buttons with like a menu on them. It has a lot of great components that you can leverage from the get-go. So now we can run npm run dev. Oh, what is the problem? Oh, it's got a problem because I'm using my this one's running a server right now. So let me kill that server real quick. All right, so let's terminate it. Could not read package JSON. It's right here. Oh, because it created another folder called weather app. That's why. Nope, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. npm run dev. So when I run npm run dev, it should run my application for the first time. Okay, now I can open my application by clicking here. Localhost 3000. Why isn't that opening? I don't know why it's not opening. Or maybe it is opening. There we go. So here's my application. It's ready to go. So you can see the first thing I see is 10-stack start, and then if you inspect it, let's close this console drawer. You can go to components, and you can already see the components here. If I wanted to see where 10-stack start is, 10-stack start is inside of, we have fragment, match, inner. What component is the parent to this? Oh, it's the app. So here's the app component, and then we have our what is this zap? Field wave sparkles. And then we have 10 stack dev tools. And this is lazy rendered. So you can look up what React lazy. Lazy basically means is that it doesn't automatically load your solution immediately. But let's go back and see. Here's your router provider, the context, and then your root document. And then you have your header content, the header, your menus inside of the header. Thank you. So anyway, this is gonna give you a good start right from the get-go. Okay, thank you. All right, sorry, I had my niece visiting. All right, so yeah, so this is how I would go about, and then what you'll it's pretty straightforward. You have your root component or your root TSX file inside of your routes, and your root is gonna load your header, your head content, and your header. Okay, and then 10 stack DevTools. I believe 10 stack DevTools is this button right here. You can see 10 stack DevTools is right here. Sorry. That's one of the things I like about 10 stack is that it comes with a lot of features that you can use through your development process. So if you wanted to change it, let's say you want to create a different component, you can add a component. So let's go here to components and create a new component. So I'm going to create a new folder. I'm going to call it example component. Make sure I spell correctly. Component. So here in my example component, I'm going to create a new file, call it example. And it's going to be .tsx because that implies that I'm creating a React component. And I have I'm going to create a React arrow functional component. This is an emit tool that I use. It's called React native snippets. You can see it there on over to the right hand side. Install that as an extension. It becomes really handy because you can actually do that and it'll automatically create the functional component for you. And so my example component, I can just put here, because it's you can notice like little yellow squiggly lines. It's because I'm not using React anywhere. So I'm going to go ahead and define this as a React functional component, and that gets rid of the little yellow warning that you see there. And then I'm going to add a React fragment, put this inside of my fragment, save it. And then in my root TSX, right here under 10 stack developer tools, I can put my component example. Where is it? Example. What's it called? Yeah, example. Why is it not picking that up? Import example from. What is, maybe it's because it's not a, yep, there we go. And then I should be able to use example down here. Example does not exist. Add 10 stack React Dev Tools. 10 stack Dev Tools. Then we have import header. So here's header. Why doesn't it let me use that? That's a little weird. I have header being used. And then I have example. I should be able to use example. I think that you have to, so let's look up header. So header is this. Export default function header. But there's got to be something defining that. That's why it's not letting me use it. Components, example component. This should let me use it. I don't know why it's not letting me use it. So we have this export function, and then we have root document. Root document. That's bizarre that I can't use example. Unstack developer tools. What did I delete? Did I delete something? I'm thinking it's because of the way my component is named. Let me delete this. And let's create it again. Create a new file. Let's see this. Oh. React functional component. And then we'll move this up. Save it. Import sample from. Why is it still showing up as example? I think it already created that. There we go. I don't see it here though. It should just show example. Oh, there it is. It's at the very bottom. But now you can create your components that way. The way this works is you have your routes in your root, and then based on the route you can show individual components. So for example, if I wanted to look at let me see, if I wanted to have, like, for instance, in the menu, you can see simple form, start API request. Let's go to simple form. So there's got to be, inside of routes, you have a form simple. And so what this is saying is we have a route that's called create file route, which opens this demo form simple, and the component that it's loading is simple form. So that whenever this changes to simple, you're seeing simple form. And then simple form is basically a functional component that uses app form, which is it's 10 stack form. And you can see your fields, and this is that's going to return. And if inside of your routes, in your indexes where you have your routes. So for instance, you have go to home, powerful server functions, flexible API routes, full streaming support, next generation ready. And then this returns. So index is what you're seeing here, the framework for the next generation of AI applications. Then you have your title and your description. These looks like they're properties coming into the component. App features. So features is just basically an array of objects that have an icon, title, and a description on all of them. Okay, so then inside of our it's being features. If you double click features, it's using a map to iterate through the features and create a div with the title and the description for each one of them. And it's using the index as the key because it's iterating through that array of elements. So let's say, for instance, you want to add another route. For example, let's say you want to add another route here to take you to a different component. So I mean, you can even say to the to the example component, you inspect it, you go to components, and you hover over one of these. So you can see this is the menu. So let's go look for menu. We should have a component called, we should be able to find menu. Here we go. Here's menu. The menu is coming from here, this component. This is the menu component. Menu size 24. Where's menu coming from? Menu is coming from Lucid React. So it's not menu. We have header, get content, header, menu. I'm trying to find out what this component is right here. Header? Let's go look at header. We can actually do Control P, header. So this is what header. Close menu, link. So here's where your demo links start. Let's add a link. So the link is we're gonna add a link, and we're gonna put in quotes slash example, just for as something we can use. On click, that is open false. That is open false means that the menu is gonna close when we click on the link. And let's so let me close my side panel here. So this is gonna close it. It's copying basically the same class that it has for it, basically just maintaining the same look and feel. And then it's not gonna use home. It's gonna use example. I think examples. What square function? Let me look at what square function is. Square function is it's using this is Lucid React, I believe, is icon library. So it's not, this is not what it's doing. So here we're gonna use, what are the options for Lucid React? Let's do Lucid React icons. So here's let's just say we want to use a bell off. So here we can use bell off, and it's going to add an import up here. You can see it, bell off. Okay. And then this is not registered yet as a route. So this to property, we need to establish that as a route. And it kind of gives you the error. Example is not assignable to type. And then these are the different types. So we need to go in and add our route. So let's see where our routes are. So we can do a check for server funcs, for example. And you can see on the route tree, here's where it's getting its routes from. It's in the weather app source and a route tree generator. So here's our route tree generator. So inside of a route tree generator, we need to create a new route. These are all of our routes that are in the solution so far. So let me go to router TSX, create route, and the routes are created by this route tree generator, which is this one right here. Route is, I don't know if we have to create, because everything seems to be going based off of, let's go back to the app. Demo. Oh, we shouldn't have to call it that. Let's just say, what did we call it? Example. We have example. Type of example. And we can add it here as well. And now you can see that the error is gone. I'm not 100% sure that I should be doing this part because I think this is auto-generated, if I'm not mistaken. And I believe it's auto-generated in route. So here we have features. Field wave sparkles. Where's the shield? I don't know what it's talking about, a shield. Trying to find where it has a shield. There's next generation ready. This is a different thing. This is on index TSX. That's this file right here. But I want to find under routes. Okay, so under routes, instead of, I think I did something wrong. I don't do the generate. I don't add that. Yeah, I don't add that there. So let's go to close this and don't save it. That should bring back the error. So what we need to do is we need to create a new folder here, a new file. And we're going to call this, let's call it, what should we call it? Training. TS. TSX. This is going to be a function, a component. You can see that it automatically creates demo training. Okay. And if we go to our route tree, I wonder if it created training. Yep, there it is. See, it automatically creates it for you. So I was wrong. You don't create the route in the file yourself. When you create the new component for the route, it's going to automatically create that for you. So now, instead of having, let me get rid of this. Let me get rid of, well, no, let's leave it there. It's the actual extension was routes. Where was it? It was demo training. So we can just copy this and put it in here so we can get rid of that error. Demo training. So now our error is gone. So it has its little trick. So don't, I mean, I hope I'm not confusing you. I haven't used one that's built out like this. The last time I created a full stack application, this was barely at the beginning stages, and I created everything from scratch. So this is the first time I'm using one that's already built for me. So just bear with me. We're kind of going through it together. So once I have that component in there, it was called, let me close all this. Okay, so now we have our route. So now, and then we have our, if we go to the menu, we should see example component, and you have our cross bill. Remember that we picked the cross bill from the Lucid components. But if I click on it, nothing's going to show up because I haven't created. It's going to show, I think, just maybe something basic. There we go. So if we go to our demo, where was it? We created a component called training. Here we go. So you see how it says hello demo training example, right? That's all that's there. But instead of having that, we can say in the return statement, I don't know why I deleted the entire thing there, but in our return statement, we just add a parenthesis and we add a fragment. And inside of our fragment, we're going to say just training demo. And right below that, we're going to, right here above, instead of having the component that we just created here, example TSX, where did we put this? We put this under, I remember, let me see. We put it under header, readme header. This one right here. We put it under root. Let's get rid of it from there. We don't need it. Okay, so we're going to save that. And in here, we're going to use example. And then we're going to import example. And if we save it, here's our example. We have an H1 with example component here. Okay, so now we probably want to build something that looks a little bit nicer than that. Obviously, we probably want to create something that has, you know, like how I have here at home. Start server functions is another one, but here in our example component, you can just build other things. So for instance, let's go look and see what it put inside of our shad cn folder. So if we scroll through, we should see data hooks, integrations, DevTools, routes. Here's our routes. I really like that whenever you create a new component for route, it automatically creates a route for you. And then where was I gonna? I was looking for the components because I thought I saw it install shad cn. Here we go. Here's our UI. So here's our button. Here's our input, label, select, slider, switch, text area. So these are components that you can use that automatically come from shad cn. So if we go to shad cn and you want to look at like say a label, let's go here and look up label. So here, label, this is how it works. So you have label. You can literally copy this into your component, for example. So we can put this, and we're going to put this inside of our training. Let's just go ahead and put it in example. Okay. Oops. Copy. And we had checkbox. We can import those. Oh, geez. Why does it literally have to do this? Okay. So there's checkbox. Obviously, checkbox is not in my components. If I go look, you can see that I don't have checkbox in here. Okay. So you need to go and get checkbox. So if we look up checkbox. So checkbox is here, but the installation, if you want to do it manually, you can do npm, install the following dependencies, and then copy paste this. You can actually use the CLI, which is what I recommend. And I think the CLI might already be installed. So let's try it. If it doesn't work, we'll install it. But here's npm. So you just install using this. So you want to open a new terminal. And you should see checkbox show up here. Would you like to start a new project? What? No. Chatcn latest add checkbox. Oh, that's because I'm back in the same issue. Let's escape this. You just push Control C. What is happening is I created a folder called Weather App, if you remember, and then the um the scaffolding tool created another folder called Weather App, but I'm inside the first Weather App folder, so I need to change directory to the second Weather App folder, and now I can run my ShadCN installation. So you can see now I have checkbox. I no longer have an error here. So if I save this and I go back to my application, you can see I have my neat, really nice looking component from ShadCN. It's a checkbox that I can use. What's another thing that we want to do? Let's go back to ShadCN. Let's go to components. And is there like a container? I feel like we need some kind of spacing. And if there's no container, we'll have to build one. So you have command. No, it doesn't look like you have a container. So we need to build like a container component. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm gonna go into my components and I'm gonna create a new folder called container. And inside of container, I'm gonna create a container file. Okay. And so this container is basically going to just, let me close the side panel here. Gonna be React functional component. Okay. And I'm gonna create, I basically want to create a shell. And that shell is basically gonna just add padding all the way around, so that way all of my content isn't like glued to the edge of the page, right? We don't want to be glued to the edge of the page. So we can create a let's see how it handles styles, because I've been working in SharePoint for a while, but let's see how it handles styles in here. So if we go to Editor TSX, it looks like it's handling styles with, from what I can tell, based on this, it looks like it's using Tailwind. Does these look like Tailwind abbreviations. So if we go to Tailwind, I think there's Tailwind, say it, the Tailwind documentation. So you can go to components. Let's just see what this hero section looks like. So if we look at the code, there's another, I have access to this, but I know you may not. I'm trying to do things the way you would basically do it, right? Like you didn't buy it. If you want to buy it, I would recommend it, but you don't have to. Let me see. And I don't know why it added Tailwind, because it doesn't let's just do it with styles. So here in my container, I think I can use style. Yeah, style. And I can just say padding 25 pixels. Okay. And in the container, I'm just gonna use children. Wait, I think I can use children. How would I use children? Bear with me a moment. I didn't memorize it. I know it's type container props, and it would be children. Yep, like that. Children. And then in here, we would use container props. Unfortunately, I can't stay that much longer. I'm going to have to go here shortly, but hopefully this was helpful. So there we go. So children. And now that I have training, I can put in here container. Oh, sorry, not like that. Container. And then I can put this inside. Okay. What is the problem here? Okay, finally it fixed the issue there. Now if I save it, I go back to the application. Oh, it brought in container from Lucid React. That's funny. I meant to bring in container, the actual component that I just created. This one. And you can see that it put some spacing around it. Now it's not stuck all the way to the edge of the screen. You saw that I created a component that serves as a wrapper, and I said anything that you put inside of it is just a child. And child can be, or children, child or children can be of type React. So any React component you can put in there, and that gives you, so if we go to the components, you can see that we have container as the outer shell. And then inside, I can create all of my components. But I'm almost going on 3 hours, 2.5 hours streaming. Really, I usually only stream for about an hour Monday through Friday. On the weekends, I go for a little bit longer. But hopefully this was helpful to you. Please come back. I love to do these kind of things. I usually develop on my own, so it's really I'm really happy to have conversation and you know, be able to help somebody. But thank you for joining me and coding with me tonight. Now see you in the next one. Peace.